When you present, do you spend a really long time, hours, maybe days or weeks, perfecting your slide deck? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I need to put that slide here, and if I say that first, then I could say that there? And then do you put in additional details? Do you add in more data to support your theory, your idea, your proposal, in order that the other person can see that you really do know what you're talking about? And do you feel like you're showing up with gravitas, that you're very serious, that you're showing up in a really grown-up kind of way? And yet, in spite of all that hard work, you often feel like your message is just not landing. You're not getting the yeses. You're not getting the excitement. You're not creating the inspiration that you think you deserve, given all the hard work that you've put in. Well, there is one strong reason why that might be happening, and it's that you're spending too much time in the wrong place. And this video is all about that space where we shouldn't be spending so much time, and actually where we should be spending more of our time. And if we shift our focus, actually do less, we're going to get better results. So that's what we're going to be speaking about today. One of the things that is really important in all of this is how we show up in our executive presence. And if you are interested in executive presence, we have a masterclass, which is running in January from the 16th to the 18th. It's £30, so $50. It's really not a massive investment for 3 hours of live training and coaching with myself. So if you are interested in executive presence, I suggest that you sign up in the link below. Come and join us for that amazing session. It is really powerful, transformational training. But for now, let's get back to that presentation that you are perfecting, spending hours on, turning up in that really serious person mode, and it's still not landing. What is going on? Why is that happening? All that hard work is not translating into the inspiration and the yeses that you are hoping. The reason for this is really there's 3 things that happen whenever we speak. So we could be presenting, we could be pitching, we could be presenting at a team meeting, talking at a team meeting. There's 3 phases of creation that need to happen whenever we're doing anything like that, whenever connecting with other human beings. So the first phase is what? What do we need to say? So what approach do we need? Are we going to have a slide deck? Are we not having a slide deck? Do we need a formal presentation or an informal presentation? So there's a kind of what's the approach here? Then we need to look at the content. So exactly what do we need to say? So what does this particular audience need to know or understand? What do they know already? What are their misconceptions? What do they need to know by the time they leave the room? So we need to be very, very clear about our content and the evidence that we might need to support that particular content. So it's not just coming across as opinion, but it has some weight and some research behind it. And that can be hard or soft data. But we do need some evidence there. And if there is specific data, making sure it's the right data, it's the most up-to-date data, all of that kind of thing. So we need to make sure that what we're saying is really, really clear. Because if it's at all muddy, if our thinking is at all muddy around this, then the message is going to be muddy to the audience. And the clearer the message is, the easier and more accessible it is. The next thing is the how of presenting. So how are we showing up? So what are we doing with our body? How are we breathing? What are we doing with our voice? Because all of that really helps our audience understand the message that we're delivering. It's the physical version of highlighting a piece of writing or putting something in bold or italics. When we use our body, our breath and our voice in concert with, so it's congruent with the content, it is so much easier for our audience to be able to absorb. It makes sense together. So the audience isn't hearing one thing in terms of the words and hearing something else in terms of the body language and tone. So very important that the 2 things marry up. In fact, I had a very good example of this not marrying up this week. I was working with a client and she was speaking with a potential client of hers. And she said to them, have you ever thought of changing it to the colour blue? And she asked it as a question. When really in that scenario, she had been brought in as the expert. And really what she needed to have done in that context was say it as a statement. Have you ever thought about changing the colour to blue? So the other person can then respond to say, oh yes, actually we did that a few years ago. It didn't work because blah, blah, blah. So making sure that the content and the way that we say it, the way that our body is being used, marries up is really, really important. And then the final thing is who. Who are we being in that moment? What is the energy that we are bringing to this particular scenario? What is our intention for this piece of communication? Now, the what is really, really important because it needs to be relevant. It needs to be insightful, not information, but insightful for our audience. It needs to be accessible and it needs to be memorable. So it's absolutely right that we spend time and energy here. But what I find is most of the people I work with spend almost all of their time, let's say 90% upwards of their time on this part. And it is important, but it's not the most important piece. So if we flip to the next stage, that how piece, how we're showing up is really is important. And people spend almost no time, maybe 10%, they'll think about how they're going to use their body. And there is no fix. You could have the best strategy, the best idea, the most amazing thought process could have gone into your slide deck. But if it's poorly presented, if you turn up with poor posture, if you turn up with a shaky voice, if you turn up with a monotone inflection, if you don't gesture at all, it will not land. So you could have spent months and months and months creating the most beautiful slide deck, the most amazing arc of a presentation. But if it's poorly presented, all that work goes to waste. So it is important to spend some time on the how piece. And most people, when they turn up to work with me, have not spent much time thinking about the how. And if they have been thinking about the how, they've been thinking about all the things that they're doing wrong, all the things they haven't yet mastered, not the things that they're already doing well and leveraging those. But the most important place, and this is the place where nobody spends any time pre-coaching, is who are you being when you show up? Who are you being in this conversation? Are you being someone who's open to inspiring others? Are you being someone who is excited to share information? Are you curious to see how this lands? Are you present to yourself, to your message, and to the audience? Because that allows ultimate flexibility. And is your intention absolutely crystal clear? What is it you want for this particular audience? And if we do not spend any time in this space, you can have a great slide deck. You can even perform really well, but it isn't necessarily going to land because you are not being the leader of this conversation. You are not being the thought leader. You are not being that individual that can inspire others. So if you want your presentations to land, we absolutely have to spend time in that space of being. And we have to do that first, not last. That is where we begin. Who do I need to be in order for this message to land with this particular audience? Because when we've got that clear, it means we know how to turn up with our body, our breath, and our voice. And it also then helps us decide what content needs to be in there and how this particular audience need to absorb that content. Because you can produce that content in a million different ways. But unless you're clear about who you're being in the first place, you're going to be preparing that content and showing up from a place of possibly fear and possibly proving, which is going to come across as not very inviting to your audience. Whereas if you're starting off with, I'm being inspirational, I am being someone who's curious, I'm being someone who's open to talk about how this is going to impact our organization or our clients, whatever it might be. So I think my message to you is that if you keep doing the same thing, if you keep perfecting your deck, if you keep thinking about the content first, you're going to keep getting the results that you've got, which is, yeah, sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't, or it doesn't land at all. And you feel like you're doing all this hard work and nobody's recognizing it. And it's frustrating. If you keep doing the same thing, you are going to get the same results. If you start thinking about who you're being, first of all, then think about how you're going to show up, what energy you need to bring, how you're going to use your body, breath, and your voice. And then you think about the content. that's when it's going to land, because everything flows from you. It flows from who you are. And really what we're talking about there is executive presence. So as I said at the beginning, if you are someone who's interested in really leveraging your personal executive presence, of really becoming a powerful, inspirational communicator, I would totally recommend that you come to our masterclass in executive presence. It's 3 hours of training over 3 days, and there's live coaching on the last day. So you get to put the learning into practice and really go away with an ability to apply your executive presence the very next day or that afternoon, depending on when you access the training. It's just £30. £30 for 3 hours of amazing training. I would totally recommend you come along. We have had some incredible transformations for attendees up until now. Take care. I hope to see you soon, and please subscribe, comment and share these videos if you find them useful. Take care for now.